We all have dreams, goals, and ambitions. But how many of us spend more time explaining why we're not where we want to be or complaining about the obstacles in our way than actually doing something about it? Here's a truth that might sting a little. Your future isn't shaped by your excuses. It's shaped by your actions. You're not here to be liked. You're not here to explain why you can't or why you're here to make things happen. The people who achieve greatness don't sit around justifying their every move or getting caught up in complaints. They get to work and stay focused on what truly matters. Every minute spent complaining or explaining is a minute you'll never get back. And that's the real cost. Imagine what you could accomplish if you stopped explaining why you're struggling and started focusing on the steps you need to take to get ahead. Imagine what would happen if you stopped letting your frustrations take over and started taking control of your path, no matter what others think. In today's video, we're going to dive deep into the powerful principle of never complain, never explain. If you want to change your life, you need to stop wasting time on things that don't move you forward. You don't owe anyone an explanation for your dreams or your hustle. The world doesn't need to understand why you're working hard or why you're pushing for more. It only needs to see you succeed. So, if you're ready to break free from the cycle of complaining and explaining, if you're ready to reclaim your time and energy for what truly matters, then stick around. What you're about to hear will change the way you approach success, and it might just be the breakthrough you've been waiting for. Let's get started. Number 1, growth demands silence, focus, and unshakable intent. Never complain, never explain. These 5 words can change your entire life. They carry a kind of power most people never understand because most people never live them. But the ones who do, they move different, they think different, and they grow in a way that can't be ignored. Now listen, if you're the kind of person who knows deep down you were made for more, if you're tired of spinning in circles, tired of talking about it, tired of chasing the same results with the same broken effort, this is for you. Because real growth doesn't happen when you're loud. Real growth doesn't need an announcement. Growth demands silence, focus, and unshakable intent. That's what separates the ones who talk from the ones who actually do. You've probably noticed it already. The world is noisy. Social media is loud. Everybody's explaining something. Everybody's posting what they're doing, why they're doing it, and who didn't support them while they did it. You see it all the time. People talking about how hard they're working, how nobody believes in them, how they've been through so much. And yet, when you look closely, the results don't match the volume. Because talking feels like doing something. But it's not. And if you're not careful, you'll fall into that same trap. You'll start thinking that sharing your struggle is the same as overcoming it. You'll start believing that explaining your pain is the same as healing from it. But it's not. The only way to grow is to put your head down and do the work in silence, without applause, without validation, without needing someone to understand your every move. That kind of growth, the one that changes you forever, starts with silence. Not the kind where you shut people out, but the kind where you stop giving energy to things that don't move you forward. You stop needing to be seen, you stop needing to be liked, you stop needing to defend your choices, you just work, you lock in. And that's where most people fall off, because silence gets lonely, growth gets uncomfortable, discipline gets boring. But the people who stay in it, day after day, hour after hour, those are the ones who transform. You have to be willing to go into that quiet space where it's just you and your goals. No crowd, no spotlight, no cheering, just your effort, your consistency, your progress. That's the space where real transformation happens. And it's not glamorous, it's not shiny, it doesn't always feel exciting, but it's necessary. Because focus isn't something you're born with. It's something you train, it's something you protect. It's something you build moment by moment, every time you choose your priorities over distractions. Now, let me say this clearly. Your focus is the most valuable thing you own. More valuable than talent, more valuable than intelligence, more valuable than charm. Because without focus, none of that matters. You can have the best idea in the world, but if your attention is scattered, if your mind is jumping from thought to thought, if you're always reacting, and never creating, you won't build anything that lasts. You might start strong, you might impress people in the beginning, but you won't finish. You won't stay consistent. You won't become what you're capable of becoming. Focus means you say no to things that most people say yes to. It means you don't chase everything that looks good. It means you don't answer every message. You don't explain why you're not available. You don't complain that you're busy. You stay focused because you know what's at stake. You know what you're building. And when you know what you're building, you don't need to justify it to anyone. That's where intent comes in. Because let's be honest, focus without intent is just busy work. Anybody can look productive. Anybody can fill a to-do list. But unshakable intent means you know exactly why you're doing what you're doing. Every step has purpose. Every move has direction. You're not just working hard, you're working right. You're building towards something that matters to you. And that kind of intent doesn't get shaken by opinions, criticism, or doubt. It doesn't fall apart when you hit a rough patch. It doesn't go missing when the motivation fades. It stays steady. It stays clear. It keeps moving forward, even when no one's watching. Unshakable intent is rare because most people don't take the time to really define their vision. They have wishes, they have dreams, they have ideas, but they don't have a plan. They don't have standards. They don't have the patience to stay with something long enough to see it grow. So they bounce from one thing to the next. They get distracted, they make excuses, and they explain why it's not working out. But when you have unshakable intent, you don't make excuses, you make adjustments. You don't explain your process, you trust it. You don't complain about the pain, you expect it. Because you're not looking for easy, you're looking for progress. And here's what you need to remember. Not everyone will understand your silence. Not everyone will respect your focus. Not everyone will get your intensity, and that's okay. You're not building for them, you're building for you. You're not here to convince anyone that your path makes sense. You're here to walk it. You're here to grow. You're here to become someone that your past self would be proud of, and that doesn't require applause, it requires work. So maybe right now, you're in a season where it feels like no one sees you, like no one understands how hard you're trying, like no one appreciates how much you're carrying. And maybe you're tempted to start explaining yourself, to prove your point, to tell the world how tired you are, how much you're sacrificing. But I'm telling you, don't waste your energy there. That's the trap. That's how you lose momentum. Stay quiet, stay focused, stay intentional, because your results will speak one day, and when they do, you won't have to explain a thing. Growth is not loud, it's not public, it's not built on attention, it's built in those unseen hours. It's built in the discipline that no one claps for. It's built in the pain you keep pushing through, and it's built in the silence you learn to respect. So don't fear the quiet. That's where you become who you were meant to be. And when it gets hard, and it will, when you feel like quitting, when you feel like giving up, remind yourself of this. You didn't come this far to stay the same. You didn't fight to survive just to coast. You've got more in you, more to give, more to build, more to become. But you'll never reach it if you keep explaining yourself. You'll never reach it if you keep complaining about the climb. So keep moving, keep building, keep growing, in silence, with focus, with unshakable intent, because that's how you rise. That's how you win. That's how you become unstoppable. And when it's all said and done, they'll ask how you did it. They'll wonder where you came from. And all you'll have to say is, I stopped complaining, I stopped explaining, and I started growing. That's the way forward. That's the life worth living. And that's just the beginning. Number 2, you're not weak for feeling tired. You're strong for not complaining about it. There's something powerful about a person who keeps going, even when they're tired. Not the kind of tired where you just need a nap or a day off. I'm talking about the kind of tired that's deeper, the kind that sits in your bones, the kind that shows up when you've been carrying your responsibilities day after day without anyone noticing, without anyone clapping for you, without anyone offering a hand. That kind of tired doesn't mean you're weak. That kind of tired means you've been strong for too long. And let me tell you something important. Feeling tired doesn't take away your strength. In fact, the fact that you feel that tired and you still choose to show up, you still keep your mouth shut and do the work, that says more about your strength than anything you could ever post or say out loud. In today's world, everyone's trying to be heard. Everyone's trying to be seen. Everyone's got something to complain about. And the louder people get, the more this culture starts to treat silence like weakness. But let me tell you, the ones who are quiet aren't weak. They're just focused. They're just strong enough to handle their problems without putting them on display. They're the ones who don't use their struggle as a badge. They carry it silently. They fight it quietly. And that kind of strength, that's rare. That's the kind of strength that builds a solid life. It doesn't demand sympathy, it earns respect. You've probably had those days where you wake up and you're already drained. You haven't even stepped out of bed yet, and the weight of everything you're dealing with is already sitting on your chest. And somehow you still find the strength to push through. Maybe it's work, maybe it's school, maybe it's family, maybe it's all three at the same time. And you keep showing up. Not because you feel great, not because it's easy, but because you made a decision to keep going. And that's the part people don't see. That's the part no one talks about. But that's where your strength lives. The world will try to convince you that strength means smiling all the time, that it means pretending you've got it all together. But strength isn't fake positivity. Strength is knowing that life is heavy sometimes and choosing to keep carrying the load anyway, even when you don't get credit, even when no one checks in on you, even when it feels like you're the only one putting in the effort. That's strength, quiet, real, unshakable. And you should never confuse exhaustion with weakness. The strongest people I've ever met weren't the loudest. They were the ones who handled more than most people ever knew and never asked for applause. You don't need to prove anything to anyone. You don't need to keep explaining that you're tired or why you're tired or who's not helping. You know what's making you tired. You know what you've been pushing through. And the fact that you haven't given up yet, that says more about you than any words ever could. When you carry on without complaining, you're building something inside of yourself. You're building endurance. You're building character. You're proving to yourself that you can do hard things. And one day, that strength is going to serve you in ways you can't even imagine yet. There's this dangerous belief going around that you always need to speak up about every struggle, that you have to vent, you have to share, you have to explain. But sometimes the most powerful move is saying nothing and just handling it. Not because you don't feel anything, but because you've chosen to keep your energy focused on getting through it, not getting attention for it. That's not cold. That's mature. That's discipline. That's ownership. That's knowing that life doesn't always offer you an audience when you're hurting, and learning how to be okay with that. And if you're the kind of person who's been pushing through quietly, I want you to hear this loud and clear. I see you, I respect you, because it takes a different kind of strength to be tired and still not fold. It takes grit to walk into work with a heavy heart and still give your best. It takes self-control to be overwhelmed but still choose not to make your problems someone else's. That kind of behavior might not get likes or shares, but it builds a life that lasts. It builds confidence that doesn't shake every time something gets hard. It builds a foundation so strong that no storm can take you down. You've made it through things you didn't think you'd survive, and you didn't scream about it. You didn't beg for pity. You just kept moving. You took the pain, the stress, the fear, and you turned it into steps forward. That's not weakness. That's not just surviving. That's growing. That's leading yourself. That's becoming the kind of person who's dangerous in the best way possible. Because you don't break under pressure. You don't seek approval. You don't crumble when things get hard. You rise. And here's the thing, some people won't understand that. They'll wonder why you don't talk more about your pain. They'll think you're fine because you're not always explaining yourself. But don't let that bother you. You're not here to be understood all the time. You're here to evolve. You're here to level up. You're here to build a life where your peace speaks louder than your complaints. And when you live like that, you don't have to keep proving anything. You don't have to keep telling people how hard it's been. You just keep building. You keep becoming. The moment you stop complaining is the moment you start taking control. Because complaining is a habit, and once you break it, you start noticing how much stronger you actually are. You realize you can face more than you thought. You learn how to deal with problems faster. You stop wasting time trying to be heard and start using that time to move forward. That's a whole different kind of power. That's how you stop waiting for someone to save you and start becoming the person who saves themselves. And maybe you're in a season right now where nothing feels easy. Maybe the weight you're carrying feels like it's too much. Maybe the people around you don't see it. Maybe you feel like it's not fair, but here's what's true. You're not weak, you're tired. There's a difference. And the fact that you're tired and still standing means you've got more strength in you than you know. You're the one holding things together. You're the one staying grounded when everything feels shaky. You're the one putting in the effort no one sees. And you're doing it without turning every moment into a public display. That's power. So keep going, keep pushing, keep showing up, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard, because there's something waiting for you on the other side of all this, something better, something worth the effort. And when you get there, you won't have to explain how hard it was. You won't have to prove how tired you were. You'll know, you'll feel it in your spirit. You'll carry the quiet confidence that only comes from walking through fire and not making noise about it. That's what this is all about. Real strength, real discipline, real growth. It's not about never getting tired. It's about what you do when you are. And if you're tired today, but still pushing forward without complaining, then you're not weak. You're powerful beyond belief. And that's something the world desperately needs more of. So hold your head high, stand in your strength. Let the tiredness remind you that you're working, building, creating, surviving. And never, ever let anyone convince you that just because you don't talk about it, you're not strong. Because sometimes the ones who say the least are the ones who've been through the most. And they're still standing, still moving, still rising. That's real power, and it's already in you. Number 3, people respect silence more than justifications. There comes a point in your life when you realize something powerful. Silence is stronger than explanations. Silence speaks in ways that words never could. And the moment you stop trying to justify yourself to people who never really understood you in the first place, that's the moment your peace begins. See, most people are chasing validation, trying so hard to be understood, to be accepted, to be seen as right. But the truth is, the more you explain yourself, the less people actually hear you. Because the ones who get you, they don't need an explanation. And the ones who don't, they're not listening anyway. People respect silence, not the silence that comes from fear or insecurity, but the silence that comes from power. The kind of silence that says, I don't need to prove anything to you. That's the kind of energy that makes people stop and pay attention. Because the person who can stay silent when everything in them wants to defend, to argue, to justify, that person is in control. That person has already won. That's what people feel. That's what they respect. Not the one who talks the most, not the one who pleads their case, but the one who knows their worth without speaking a word. We live in a time where everyone is talking. Everyone's got a story, an opinion, a response, a reason. Social media taught people to broadcast their every move, explain their every choice, defend every decision like the whole world needs to approve of them. But here's the thing, the more you try to explain yourself, the more you drain yourself, the more you chase approval, the more you lose your direction. Silence isn't passive, it's strategic. It's knowing what to say, when to say it, and most importantly, when to say nothing at all, because silence protects your energy. Silence creates mystery. Silence builds your character. You don't owe anyone an explanation for growing, for changing, for doing better. You don't have to sit down and walk someone through why you're not who you used to be. If they really cared, they'd be clapping for you. If they truly understood you, they'd already know the reasons. Growth doesn't come with a disclaimer. And the more you evolve, the more you'll realize that explanations aren't part of your journey anymore. Let people think what they want. Let them wonder. Let them create their own stories. Meanwhile, you keep building, keep showing up, keep rising. Quietly, sometimes silence is the loudest thing in the room. When everyone's shouting, when people are throwing accusations or misunderstanding your motives, when people are poking at your character, hoping to get a reaction, that's when silence becomes your armor. Because nothing disarms drama like a calm presence. Nothing frustrates chaos more than composure. And the moment you learn to sit with the discomfort of being misunderstood without rushing to defend yourself, that's the moment you step into maturity. That's when you stop playing small. That's when you level up. Think about it. Some of the strongest people you know aren't the ones always explaining themselves. They're the ones who let their results do the talking. They show up, they work hard, they grow quietly, they live with focus. And when people misunderstand them, they let it be. Because they're not interested in changing minds. They're interested in changing their life. And when you get to that place, you stop needing to be right in conversations that don't matter. You stop wasting time defending your character to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. You stop chasing respect and start commanding it with your silence. Respect doesn't come from how well you can argue your side. Respect comes from how well you can carry yourself without saying a word. When you walk in the room and you don't need to prove yourself, that's power. When someone criticizes you and you don't flinch, that's power. When someone doubts you and you don't feel the need to explain your vision, that's power. Because deep down, people respect the ones who don't flinch under pressure, the ones who don't beg for understanding, the ones who don't hand out explanations like candy. People are drawn to that kind of strength. They feel it, they sense it, and make no mistake, there will always be people who want to pull you into conversations you don't need to have. People who question your decisions, your priorities, your mindset, not because they're curious, but because they're uncomfortable with how much you've grown. And if you keep stopping to explain yourself every time someone throws a doubt your way, you'll never move forward. You'll stay stuck in a cycle of over-explaining, oversharing, and still not being understood. You don't have time for that, not if you're serious about where you're going. Silence also gives you the space to listen to yourself. Because when you're constantly trying to be heard, you stop hearing your own intuition. You drown out your inner voice. And most of the time, the answers you're looking for aren't out there. They're inside you. But you can't access that wisdom if you're too busy justifying your every move to people who aren't on your level. Silence creates space for clarity. It gives you room to think, to reflect, to grow. That's why silence isn't empty. It's full of answers. But you've got to stop talking long enough to hear them. One of the most freeing things you'll ever experience is realizing that you don't owe your story to anyone. You don't owe your struggle. You don't owe your past. You don't owe your reasons. You get to move on without putting your pain on display. You get to heal without performing. You get to grow without broadcasting every single step. That's the beauty of quiet growth. It might not get likes, it might not get comments, but it gets results. It gets peace. And it builds a life that doesn't fall apart the moment people stop clapping. Now, I know this isn't always easy, especially when you've been someone who always felt like they had to explain everything. You've probably said, "Let me explain," more times than you can count because you wanted to be understood. You didn't want people thinking the wrong thing, but here's the truth. People will think what they want to think regardless of what you say. You could write a book explaining your every decision, and someone would still misinterpret your intention. So stop trying to win that game. You don't win by being louder, you win by being wiser. And you're not being rude by choosing silence. You're not being cold. You're being intentional. You're choosing to protect your peace. You're choosing to stay focused on what really matters. You're choosing not to let other people's opinions dictate your energy. That's not weakness, that's emotional strength. That's maturity. That's knowing that your time is valuable, your growth is sacred, and your energy doesn't need to be spent explaining yourself to every single person who questions your path. People notice when you stop reacting. They notice when you stop explaining. They notice when you stop giving energy to drama. And even if they don't say it, deep down, they respect it because silence makes people sit with their own thoughts. Silence forces people to wonder. Silence invites curiosity. And the moment you stop justifying and start walking with confidence, that's when the tables turn. That's when you stop being someone who seeks validation and start being someone who commands respect without ever having to ask for it. So if you've been explaining yourself to people who don't deserve your truth, let this be the moment you stop. Let this be the day you decide that your silence is worth more than their misunderstanding. Because you weren't born to constantly defend yourself. You were born to grow, to evolve, to create, to lead. And sometimes the greatest strength you can show is saying absolutely nothing and letting your actions, your peace, your results do all the talking. People respect silence more than justifications. Always have, always will. Number 4, complaining is a comfort habit, and comfort kills growth. If you really want to change your life, if you're serious about growth, about leveling up, about becoming the kind of person who doesn't just survive but thrives, you have to start being honest about one thing. Comfort is not your friend. And the habit of complaining, that's the most dangerous kind of comfort there is. It feels like it helps, it feels like it gives you some release, but the truth is, complaining does nothing but keep you stuck right where you are. You think you're venting, but you're just feeding the part of you that wants to stay the same. Most people don't even realize they've made complaining a lifestyle. They wake up and before they've even had a full conversation, they're already in it. Talking about how tired they are, how unfair everything feels, how someone else always has it easier. They do it at work, at home, on the phone, online, and here's what's scary. They don't even hear it anymore. Because complaining has become their background noise. It's the soundtrack of their life, and if you let it, it will steal your entire future. Not because your situation can't change, but because you've convinced yourself that talking about the problem is the same as doing something about it. But nothing grows in a place where complaining is constant. You don't build strength there. You don't build resilience. You don't create solutions. You just recycle the same frustrations over and over again. And eventually you start to believe that's all life is, just one big cycle of struggle and storytelling about the struggle. And the worst part is it feels so normal, so comfortable. That's why it's dangerous. That's why it's a trap. Because it gives you a sense of being busy, of processing, of dealing with life, but it never actually pushes you forward. It never demands change. It just soothes the parts of you that are afraid to do the real work. If you're serious about growing, really growing, you have to get uncomfortable. You have to be willing to shut down the urge to complain and replace it with the discipline to take action. Because complaining is easy. Anyone can do it. It takes no skill, no effort, no risk. But turning your complaints into action, that's where the real strength is. That's where growth begins. That's when you stop waiting for someone else to fix it and start becoming the kind of person who faces the discomfort and moves anyway. Comfort will lie to you. It will whisper things like, take it easy. It's not your fault. Someone else should fix this. And if you listen to that voice long enough, you'll start building your identity around it. You'll start defining yourself by your limitations instead of your potential. You'll start shrinking your dreams to fit your comfort zone, and you won't even realize you're doing it. Because comfort doesn't show up like a threat. It shows up like a friend. It shows up like safety, like understanding, like logic. And before you know it, you're not chasing goals anymore. You're just chasing reasons why it's okay to settle. But growth doesn't happen in the comfortable conversations. Growth doesn't happen when you're sitting around with people who co-sign your excuses. Growth happens in the hard decisions, the quiet moments, the self-checks where you have to ask yourself, am I complaining right now, or am I doing something about it? And sometimes that question alone is enough to snap you out of the pattern. That one bit of awareness can interrupt a whole cycle that's been holding you back for years. See, the mind loves patterns. And if your pattern is to complain, your mind is going to keep looking for things to complain about. It becomes your filter. Something good happens, and your mind finds the one thing wrong with it. You wake up on a new day, and instead of seeing opportunity, you see inconvenience. That's not life being hard. That's your focus being broken. That's your habits taking the wheel. And every time you choose to stay in that state, you're choosing to give your power away. But imagine what would happen if you interrupted that pattern. Imagine if just for one day, you replaced every complaint with a question like, what can I do about this? Or how can I learn from this? Or what's my next move? You'd start seeing things differently. You'd start showing up differently. Your energy would shift. Your results would shift because you're not waiting anymore, you're moving. You're not just noticing problems, you're solving them. And that's the kind of mindset that builds real confidence, the kind that can't be shaken by circumstances. Let me tell you something real. Strong people feel frustration too. They get tired, they get angry, they feel overwhelmed, but they don't live there. They don't pitch a tent and call it home. They use those emotions as fuel. They feel it, but then they ask, now what? Because sitting in the complaint might feel good in the moment, but it won't build the future you want. It won't change the outcome. And it sure won't earn you the respect you're capable of commanding. And I get it. We all want to be heard. We want someone to know we're struggling. We want someone to understand. But real connection doesn't come from constantly talking about what's wrong. Real connection comes from rising through it, growing through it, and showing others what's possible. You become the light in someone's darkness, not by echoing their complaints, but by showing them another way to move forward. And sometimes that means choosing progress over pity. It means choosing effort over comfort. You'll notice this too. The more you grow, the less you tolerate complaining around you. You'll start feeling drained when you're around people who always have a problem but never a solution. You'll feel the weight of conversations that go nowhere, because once you've experienced the momentum that comes from choosing action over excuses, you can't go back. You can't sit in circles that talk about the same problems week after week and call it connection. You crave movement, you crave purpose. And you realize that peace doesn't come from venting, it comes from doing the work. There's nothing soft about that kind of mindset. That's strength. That's leadership. That's what sets you apart. Because anyone can complain, but not everyone can face themselves, take responsibility and rise. Not everyone can look their situation in the eye and say, this might not be my fault, but it is my fight. And that's what growth demands. That's what greatness requires. It doesn't need you to be perfect. It needs you to be committed. Committed to showing up, even when it's uncomfortable. Committed to pushing through, even when the easiest thing to do is talk about why it's hard. So if you've been stuck in the loop, if you've been talking more than you've been doing, this is your call to stop. Not to ignore your feelings, not to bottle things up, but to shift your focus. To decide that you're not going to let a comfort habit keep you from building a powerful life, because you're not here to stay the same. You're not here to coast. You're here to evolve. And evolution doesn't happen in conversations where the only thing growing is your list of complaints. You already have what it takes. You don't need perfect circumstances. You need courage. You need discipline. You need honesty. And the most honest thing you can do today is ask yourself, am I choosing growth or am I choosing comfort disguised as complaining? Because once you answer that, everything changes. Once you take back that power, you stop waiting for someone to save you and start becoming the person who saves yourself. And that's when your life begins to transform. Not someday, not next year, but today, right now. One decision at a time, one action at a time, one choice to stop complaining and start growing at a time. Number 5, life gets easier when you stop needing everyone to understand you. Life becomes a lot more peaceful, a lot more focused, and way more powerful when you finally stop needing everyone to understand you. There's something deeply freeing about letting go of that invisible weight, the constant explaining, justifying, defending. It's heavy. And for most people, it's the very thing that's keeping them from moving forward. They're not stuck because they lack talent or effort. They're stuck because they're too worried about how people will interpret their moves, too consumed by what others might say or think or assume. And here's the truth most won't say out loud. The more you try to make everyone understand you, the more misunderstood you actually become. People love to say, be yourself, but the moment you step into that truth fully, not in pieces, not watered down, but the real, raw version of who you are, suddenly the same people start pulling back. They ask why you've changed. They question your choices. They try to fit you back into the version of you they're most comfortable with. But that's not your responsibility. You don't owe anyone a version of you that makes them feel better. Your responsibility is to be aligned with who you're becoming not who they remember you as. And the sooner you realize that, the quicker you take your power back. Most of the time, the need to be understood comes from fear. Fear of judgment, fear of abandonment, fear of rejection. But let's break that down. If someone judges you for growing, were they ever really for you in the first place? If someone distances themselves because you no longer play small, were they ever meant to walk with you long term? And if someone misunderstands your silence, your hustle, your transformation, maybe that's exactly what's supposed to happen. Not because you owe them clarity, but because you're stepping into a chapter they weren't built for. You don't need permission to evolve. You don't need a round of applause to start over. And you definitely don't need a committee of approval to make bold moves. Some of your best decisions will be the most misunderstood by others, and that's okay. That's how you know you're building something real. Because real growth doesn't come with crowd validation. It comes with inner confirmation. That quiet voice inside that says, this is your path, keep walking. And that's the only voice that matters in the long run. Think about how much energy gets wasted trying to make people see your heart, your intent, your dreams. You write long texts, explain your plans, sugarcoat your boundaries, all because you want them to get it. You want them to support it. But sometimes the truth is they just won't. Not because you're wrong, not because your path is flawed, but because it wasn't given to them. It was given to you. And if you keep waiting for others to co-sign what was meant for you alone, you'll delay your destiny over and over again. It's not about being cold. It's about being clear. There's a huge difference. You can love people and still not need them to understand you. You can have compassion and still keep moving without their validation, because peace isn't found in being understood. It's found in understanding yourself. It's found in being so rooted in your why that you don't flinch when people question your how. And that level of clarity only comes when you stop outsourcing your identity to other people's opinions. Now, here's where it gets real. When you start walking in your truth, not everyone's going to clap. Some people will go silent. Some will talk. Some will fall off completely. And that's the price of authenticity. Not everyone can afford it, but you can. You can afford to lose the approval of people who were never invested in your growth. You can afford to walk alone for a while, if it means walking in alignment, because every great breakthrough requires a season of being misunderstood. That's just how it works. Think about the most powerful people you know, the ones who inspire you, who move you. Were they always understood? No. Most of them were ridiculed, judged, questioned, but they didn't stop. They didn't pause their purpose just because someone didn't get it. They moved anyway. And that's what made them unshakable. They realized that being understood is nice, but it's not necessary. What's necessary is being faithful to the calling on your life, even if it looks strange to someone else. You have to be okay with walking away from people who only support the version of you that stays small. You have to be okay with outgrowing rooms, friendships, conversations. That's not arrogance, that's evolution. And if you're constantly shrinking just to be more understandable, you're choosing comfort over greatness. You're choosing to stay visible to people who aren't even looking at you through the right lens. You deserve better than that. The right people won't need long explanations. The right people won't need you to constantly prove yourself. They'll see the energy shift. They'll feel the elevation. And even if they don't fully understand it, they'll respect it. That's the difference. That's what you're looking for. Not agreement, but respect. Not applause, but alignment. And those things don't come from explaining yourself over and over. They come from living in a way that speaks louder than words ever could. And here's something you've got to remember. You don't need to defend your peace. You don't need to justify your healing. You don't need to explain your ambition. Some seasons require you to go quiet, to get serious, to cut back on small talk, and turn up the self-discipline. That's not being distant. That's being dedicated. That's not being cold. That's being focused. And the ones who truly care about you will understand that. They might not get all the details, but they'll trust the direction. You get one life. One. And every second you spend trying to be understood by people who aren't meant to walk your path is a second you lose from building something legendary. You weren't put here to be everyone's favorite version of you. You were put here to become the version of you that's aligned with purpose, power, and peace. And you can't do that while constantly explaining why you're choosing growth over comfort, vision over validation, purpose over popularity. Let them misunderstand you, let them talk, let them think you've changed, because you have. And that's the whole point. Growth doesn't come with a memo. It shows up quietly, and sometimes it shows up alone. But if you keep walking with intention, it will lead you to everything you've been asking for, not because you explained it well, but because you lived it fully. And in the end, that's what matters. So stop needing everyone to get it. Start focusing on becoming so clear, so certain, so grounded that even when they don't understand, you still move. Even when they doubt, you still rise. Even when they walk away, you still walk forward, because your journey is yours. And the moment you stop needing everyone to understand you is the moment you step into a whole new level of freedom. And that's where your real life begins. Number 6, you don't owe anyone a story. You owe yourself progress. There comes a moment in life where you realize something powerful. You don't owe anyone a story. Not about why you've been distant, not about why you're moving different, not even about what you're working on. You don't owe anyone an explanation for why you've gone silent, why you've changed, or why you're not as available as you used to be. What you owe more than anything else is progress to yourself. That's it. Not a summary, not a breakdown, not a public announcement, just progress. The kind you can feel in your spirit when no one's watching. The kind that doesn't need approval. That's where your real power lives. We live in a world that's obsessed with stories. Social media makes it feel like every step you take needs to be posted, captioned, filtered, explained. But the truth is, some of your most meaningful growth will happen off camera, in private, in silence. That's where the real work gets done. That's where you confront your demons, push through doubt, and rebuild yourself piece by piece. And the beauty of that journey is that it doesn't have to make sense to anyone but you. Because this life, your life, is not a group project, it's yours. There's so much pressure to make people understand your pain, your hustle, your timeline. But here's the thing, most people are too busy with their own lives to truly understand yours. And it's not their fault. It's just reality. You can pour your heart out explaining why you're doing what you're doing, but at the end of the day, no one feels your hunger like you do. No one carries your past, your battles, or your future like you do. And that's why you've got to stop wasting energy crafting stories for people who aren't going to walk your journey for you. When you're chasing something real, something meaningful, something that requires discipline and focus, you don't have time to be understood. You don't have time to pause your process just to satisfy curiosity. You're too busy becoming. And that's what matters, not how well you explain yourself, not how relatable your moves are, but how aligned your actions are with where you're going. That's what separates the ones who talk about changing their lives from the ones who actually do it. You know, what's more powerful than telling someone your next move? Making the move and letting your results speak for you? Progress is the loudest language. It doesn't need subtitles. It doesn't need a microphone. It shows up in the way you carry yourself, the way your energy shifts, the way you walk into a room with quiet confidence because you know what you've been building in the dark. You don't have to say a word when you're leveling up. Your growth announces itself without permission. People will always want to know the why behind your silence, the how behind your success, the what behind your change. But that's not your job to provide. You don't owe it. What you owe is showing up for yourself day after day, especially when it's hard, especially when it's lonely, especially when no one's cheering you on. You owe it to yourself to stay committed, stay focused, and stay grounded, not for the sake of impressing others, but for the sake of finally seeing what happens when you don't quit. It's easy to get caught in the trap of over-explaining. You want people to know you're not being rude. You want them to know you're still working hard, still dreaming big, still trying your best. But here's a harsh truth that frees you once you accept it. People who truly know your heart don't need constant updates. And people who constantly demand updates probably don't care about your peace. You've got to protect that peace. Not everyone deserves a front row seat to your process. Not everyone should have access to your in-progress chapter. Think about this. How many times have you delayed a decision just because you were worried about what someone would say? How many times have you stopped yourself from changing paths, starting fresh, cutting ties, or raising your standards because you thought you'd have to explain yourself to someone who doesn't even understand your vision? That's a heavy price to pay for something that isn't even required. You don't need permission to grow, you just need courage. The more you try to make your life make sense to people who aren't growing with you, the more you'll feel drained, because no amount of explaining will make them see what you see. You're operating on a different frequency now. Your thoughts are bigger, your time is more valuable, your goals are more serious. You can't be explaining greatness to someone who's only comfortable with average. And the truth is, some people liked you better when you were unsure, uncertain, and small, because it made them feel more comfortable. But growth doesn't ask for comfort, it demands clarity. And that clarity comes from keeping your energy where it matters most, within. When you stop giving away your story to people who haven't earned the right to hear it, you take back your power. You stop leaking energy. You stop second-guessing yourself, and you start creating progress that you can feel in your soul, the kind that makes you proud even when nobody else claps. That's real success, not validation, not approval. You owe it to yourself to wake up with intention, to push through even when you feel like giving up, to say no when something doesn't serve you, to choose silence when you know your peace is worth more than being understood. Because every time you do that, you're building something solid, something that lasts. And that kind of foundation doesn't need decoration. Your story doesn't have to be posted for it to be powerful. Your breakthrough doesn't have to be broadcasted for it to be real. Some of your greatest accomplishments will never make it to Instagram, and that's okay, because they'll make it into your character, into your discipline, into the way you carry yourself when life tries to shake you. That's the kind of strength you're building. Quiet strength, solid strength, unshakable strength. And remember this, the people who really matter, the ones who truly care, they'll see the change without you saying a word. They'll notice the glow, the calm, the shift in your energy. They'll respect the way you chose to keep going instead of complaining. They'll admire the fact that you didn't stop to prove a point. You just moved forward and let your actions speak louder than anything you could have said. So stop feeling guilty for not sharing every detail. Stop explaining your silence. Stop trying to make everyone comfortable with your progress. You're not here to be understood. You're here to evolve. You're here to become everything you've been dreaming of. And that journey, it belongs to you. No explanations needed. Now go. Make progress, not announcements. Be so focused on becoming who you're meant to be that you don't even feel the need to look back. Because the real reward isn't in being understood. It's in knowing that every step you took brought you closer to your truth. And that's something no story could ever fully explain. Number 7, nobody's coming to save you, so stop explaining why you're not winning yet. There comes a time when you have to face the truth that changes everything. And it's not the easiest thing to accept, but once it hits you, you can't unsee it. It's this: nobody's coming to save you, not your friends, not your family, not a mentor, not some miracle out of nowhere, not someone who randomly discovers you and gives you a shortcut. That fantasy, you have to let it go. Because the moment you understand that no one's on the way to rescue you, something shifts inside you. Stop waiting, you stop wishing, and you finally begin. That's the turning point that builds unshakable strength. Too many people spend their life in the waiting room of success, waiting for the right mood, waiting for the right time, waiting for someone to understand them, waiting for someone to believe in them, waiting for someone to hand them an opportunity. But days become weeks, and weeks turn into months, and suddenly years pass by, and they're still sitting there, still explaining why they haven't made it yet. But here's what the world doesn't care about: your reasons, your explanations, your justifications. Life isn't handing out rewards for who had the best excuse. It's paying the ones who decided to rise up anyway, despite, in spite, no matter what. You don't need another person to tell you it's possible. You don't need the universe to align in your favor. You don't need the perfect conditions. What you need is to look yourself in the mirror and say, if it's going to happen, it has to start with me. That's where your real power begins. Because when you stop hoping someone else is going to pull you out of the hole, and you start digging yourself out, hand by hand, day by day, That's when you build confidence. Real earned confidence. Not the kind that needs applause. The kind that knows I showed up for me when no one else did. Now, I know this might hit hard because deep down, we all want to be saved in some way. We want someone to show up and say, I see how hard it's been and I've got you now. But if you've been waiting on that moment, let me be the voice to tell you it's not coming. And it's not because you're not worthy. It's not because no one cares. It's because the world is wired in a way that only those who move without waiting, those are the ones who make it. And look, you don't need to keep explaining why you haven't made it yet. You don't have to break yourself down trying to make others understand your path. You don't need to prove to anyone that you're trying your best. The energy you spend explaining could be the same energy you use to keep going, to get better, to take another step. The truth is, no matter how good your reasons are, they won't change the results. You could have all the right explanations and still be stuck in the same place. Because success doesn't come to those with good stories. It comes to those with consistent action. Think about how many times you've caught yourself trying to justify your delay. I'm just figuring things out right now. Once I get some help, I'll really start. If this one thing hadn't happened, I'd be way ahead. You don't have to do that anymore. No one's grading you on how well you explain your setbacks. You're not in front of a jury. You're in front of your life. And it's asking you one question. Are you going to rise, or are you going to wait for someone to lift you? And here's where most people get stuck. They confuse sympathy for progress. They think if people understand their pain, it somehow moves them forward. But it doesn't. Sympathy doesn't build habits. Understanding doesn't build skills. Support doesn't replace discipline. Only work does that. Only consistency does that. Only showing up again and again, even when it's lonely, even when it's hard. That's what gets you there. And once you understand that, everything changes. You can stop begging for permission. You can stop needing the world to clap for your journey. You can stop trying to explain to people who aren't even walking your path, because guess what? Most of them aren't watching. And if they are, they're watching from a distance. They're not living your struggle. They're not staying up with your fears. They're not sitting in your silence. You are. You're the one facing those thoughts when the lights go out. You're the one staring at the ceiling, wondering if you'll ever get there. So if anyone should believe in you, it's you first, loudest, always. There's something incredible that happens when you stop explaining and start executing. You free up your mind. You stop trying to defend yourself, and you focus on developing yourself. You stop trying to look like you're winning and you start doing what it takes to win, for real. No shortcuts, no stories, just progress. And that kind of quiet focus, that's what separates you from the crowd. That's what builds momentum. Not shouting your goals, but grinding in silence. You can't wait for life to get easier. You can't wait for motivation to magically appear. You can't wait for your circumstances to be perfect. You can't keep delaying your greatness just because the people around you don't get it yet. You've got to move now. Start now, fail forward now, even when it's messy, even when no one notices, because your future self is begging you to stop stalling and just begin. The harsh truth is, most people don't care how hard it's been. And the beautiful part is, you don't need them to. You don't need their validation to succeed. You don't need their understanding to rise. You just need you. Locked in, focused, tired of your own excuses, ready to stop telling the story and start rewriting the ending. Because it's in your hands now. So let this be the end of the waiting. Let this be the day you stop explaining and start climbing. Let this be the moment you finally understand that no one's coming to push you forward. It's on you now. And that's not a burden, it's a gift. Because if it's up to you, that means you control it. You get to decide how far you'll go. You get to decide how much fight you've got left. And you don't need anyone to understand that. You just need to walk it out. So don't waste another hour trying to be understood. Don't explain why it's taken you so long. Just begin. Get serious, get quiet, get focused, and remember, this is your life. You can't outsource it. You can't wait on someone to carry you across the finish line. You have to do it. You have to build it. You have to earn it. And when you do, You won't need applause. You won't need to explain. You'll just look back and realize you did it because you stopped waiting and you started becoming. Number 8, complaining is the language of people who quit on themselves. At some point, you've got to draw the line and decide what kind of person you're going to be, because the truth is your life is constantly listening to your words, and it responds to what you keep feeding it. If you wake up every day and the first thing out of your mouth is what's wrong, what's unfair, what's too hard, what's not working, what somebody else did, what opportunity you didn't get, then you're feeding the exact thing that's holding you back. Every complaint is like watering the weeds in your life. And if you keep doing it long enough, those weeds take over everything. They choke out your ambition, your courage, your momentum, and eventually all that's left is the story you keep telling yourself about why it's not your fault. Let's not pretend that complaining doesn't feel good in the moment. It does. It's comfortable. It's validating. It gives you the illusion that you're doing something about your problems when you're really just giving them more power. Because that's what complaining is. It's emotional procrastination. It's avoiding action by putting your energy into blame. And the people who make complaining their second language, the ones who always have something negative to say, those are usually the ones who quit on themselves a long time ago. Somewhere along the line, they decided that effort wasn't worth it, that growth was too hard, that the world owed them something easier. So instead of pushing through the struggle, they started rehearsing the struggle. Instead of solving problems, they started building identities around them. And now they've become storytellers of failure, always ready to give you the full list of reasons why things aren't going well. But here's what makes this dangerous. When you complain too much, you begin to believe your own limitations. You start to think your struggle is special, that your pain is permanent, and that no one could possibly understand how hard it is for you. And that kind of thinking becomes a cage. You're not just stuck anymore. You're convinced you're supposed to be. And once you've accepted that belief, the motivation to change disappears. Because why would you fight for a better life if you think your life can't get better? Why would you show up with discipline and sacrifice if you already believe it won't make a difference? That's why people who complain a lot often quit quietly. They still go through the motions, they still pretend to be working, but deep down they've already checked out. They're not chasing growth, they're just trying to survive. They're not building something, they're just managing the disappointment. And every complaint is just another excuse not to rise. It's another reason to stay small. Another way to avoid responsibility. And before long, that becomes normal. You start thinking that talking about the problem is the same as fixing it. But it's not. The only thing that changes when you complain is your attitude. And it gets worse, not better. You know what separates the ones who make it from the ones who stay stuck? It's not intelligence, it's not talent, it's not luck. It's attitude, it's mindset. It's the decision to shut down the complaints and turn up the commitment. Winners don't waste energy talking about what's wrong. They use that energy to figure out what to do next. They take responsibility. They take ownerships. They say, maybe it's not my fault, but it's still my life, and I refuse to let complaining be the soundtrack to my story. That's the shift. That's when things start changing. And you don't have to be perfect to stop complaining. You don't need to have everything figured out, but you do need to decide that your future is worth more than your excuses. You need to believe that your potential deserves more than your pain. And you need to understand that every time you complain, you're investing in the version of you that stays the same. But every time you get quiet, get focused, and choose action instead, you're investing in the version of you that breaks through. Now let's be real. Life is hard. No one's denying that. But hard is not the enemy. Hard is the path. Every great thing you've ever wanted lives on the other side of difficulty. And the moment you make peace with that, the moment you stop acting like struggle is a surprise, the stronger you become. Because now, instead of complaining about the mountain, you start climbing it. You stop saying, why is it so steep? And you start saying, let's go, one step at a time. That's what separates the dreamers from the doers. The dreamers wait for the path to be smooth. The doers lace up and walk the one in front of them, no matter how rough it is. And here's the beauty of it. Once you stop complaining, you start noticing all the opportunities that were always there, but hidden behind your negativity. You start seeing possibilities where you used to see problems. You start finding reasons to keep going instead of reasons to give up. That shift in language becomes a shift in energy, and that shift in energy becomes a shift in results. And once you feel that, once you taste what it's like to move without constantly pulling yourself back with complaints, you'll never want to go back. Don't let your mouth talk you out of the life your soul is begging you to fight for. Don't let your complaints become louder than your commitment. Because one day, you're going to look back and realize that every excuse you gave was time you'll never get back. And the worst kind of regret is knowing that you had the strength, the talent, the vision, but you chose the comfort of complaining instead. It's not about never feeling frustrated. It's not about pretending things are easy. It's about deciding that your struggle is not your language. Your power is your vision, is your work ethic. So from this moment on, catch yourself when the complaints start coming out. Pause, ask yourself, is this helping me move forward, or is this keeping me small? And if it's not helping, drop it, replace it, redirect it, turn it into action. Let your energy speak in the form of progress. Let your story be one of quiet hustle, not loud excuses. Because the world doesn't need more people explaining why they didn't become who they were meant to be. The world needs more people who stopped complaining, took control, and showed us what was possible. Be that person. Be the one who chose courage over comfort, focus over frustration, discipline over drama. And watch what happens when you give your life everything you've got and not one more excuse. Number 9, high standards require quiet confidence, not verbal defenses. There's something powerful about a person who doesn't need to explain themselves. Someone who doesn't have to defend why they don't settle. Someone who moves differently, not because they think they're better, but because they've made a promise to themselves they refuse to break. You don't see them arguing online. You don't see them reacting every time someone doesn't understand their standards. They're not interested in being loud. They're interested in being excellent. They're not wasting time convincing people they're right. They're too busy becoming the kind of person who doesn't need to. That's the kind of energy that builds real strength. Because when you truly raise your standards, something shifts inside you. You stop trying to prove anything to anyone. You stop begging people to see your value. You stop explaining why you demand more from life, from others, and most importantly, from yourself. And the reason you stop doing that is simple. High standards are for you, not for them. You don't raise your standards so people applaud you. You raise them because you've lived the other way before, and you're not going back. Most people don't understand this at first, because we grow up in a world that praises noise. People think if you speak louder, you must be right. If you argue harder, you must believe in yourself. But the truth is, most of the time, the loudest people are the most insecure. The ones who constantly defend their choices, explain their worth, and fight for approval. Those are usually the ones who still doubt themselves deep down. And they don't need to be judged for it. They need to wake up from it. Because the moment you realize your life doesn't need to be validated by anyone but you become untouchable. High standards are misunderstood because they make other people uncomfortable. When you hold yourself to a level of discipline, focus, and values that most people aren't used to, they'll either try to pull you back or push you away. Some will say, you're too much. Some will say you've changed. And some will get defensive, as if your progress is a threat to their comfort. That's okay. That's supposed to happen. Because not everyone is meant to walk the same path, and not everyone is willing to pay the price that high standards require. But here's where the trap shows up. When people start misunderstanding you, you'll feel the urge to explain. You'll want to say, I'm doing this because I expect more from myself, or I'm not settling because I know what I'm worth. You'll want to defend your priorities, your goals, your mindset, and in the beginning, it's normal to feel that way. But if you want real power, if you want peace and strength, you've got to get to a place where silence becomes your response, where your growth is loud and your mouth is quiet, where your progress speaks for you and your actions answer the questions nobody had the courage to ask. Quiet confidence is what separates the ones who last from the ones who talk big but burn out. It's easy to announce your plans to the world. It's easy to say you're going to rise, to win, to build something massive. But when you do that too much, your ego starts feeding on the applause instead of the actual work. You become addicted to being seen, and you lose the very discipline that could have made you unstoppable. Quiet confidence says, watch me build it, and then decide what you believe. Quiet confidence doesn't ask for agreement. It doesn't chase approval. It doesn't shrink when misunderstood. It just moves. Day by day, silently, fear. And there's nothing more powerful than a person who is consistent in private. A person who keeps their standards high, even when no one's watching. A person who keeps showing up, who keeps growing, who keeps refining, not for a show, but for themselves. Because that's what high standards really are. They're a private commitment. They're not a billboard for others to clap for. They're the quiet rules you set for your own greatness. They're the boundaries that protect your future. And when you protect them long enough, you start attracting people, opportunities, and outcomes that match that frequency. You'll start to notice something beautiful. The more confident you become in your standards, the less you have to talk about them. The more grounded you feel in your values, the less you feel the need to defend them. The more you elevate, the quieter you become. Not because you're hiding, but because you've finally realized you don't owe explanations for a life that's aligned. You don't need to prove yourself when you're proud of yourself. You don't need to convince anyone when you're already convinced. And yes, it might be lonely at times. Having high standards will make your circle smaller. It will create distance between you and the people who still choose comfort over growth. But that space isn't loss. It's clarity. It's the silence where you hear your real voice. It's the stillness where your power rises. And once you taste that, you won't want the noise again. You won't want the arguments, the back and forths, the need to be understood. You'll be too focused on becoming. That's where freedom begins. When you don't flinch when people misjudge you. When you don't collapse when people doubt you. When you're okay with being misunderstood because you know exactly who you are. That's when your life becomes yours again. That's when the weight of other people's opinions finally gets lifted. That's when your energy stops getting drained by explanations and starts getting used for execution. So if you're someone who's decided to raise your standards, don't look back. If people don't understand you, let them. If they talk, let them. If they doubt, let them. You don't owe them your story. You owe yourself progress. You owe yourself peace. You owe yourself the kind of life that feels like truth, not performance. And that kind of life is only built by the ones who don't waste their breath defending it. They just live it, fully, quietly. Let your growth be so solid that you never have to argue for it. Let your standards be so rooted in self-respect that you never need to scream them. Let your confidence be so deep that no opinion can shake it. And let your life be the loudest message you ever send. Not because you shouted, but because you stayed committed when others gave up. Stayed focused when others got distracted, and stayed grounded when others were chasing attention. High standards aren't for everyone, but if they're for you, don't water them down to make other people comfortable. Don't soften them just to fit in. Let them refine you. Let them separate you. Let them elevate you. Because in the end, your peace will come not from being understood, but from being true to the person you promised yourself you'd become. Keep your head down. Keep your heart full. Keep your standards high. And don't explain. Just become. Number 10, you're not here to be liked. You're here to be great. You've got one life to live. You've got one shot to make it count. But for some reason, we're all taught to fit into molds, to seek validation, to play nice and do what's comfortable. We've been told over and over that our worth is tied to how many people like us, how well we fit into the box, how much we please others. But here's the truth. None of that matters. You're not here to be liked. You're here to be great. The sooner you accept that, the sooner you'll stop living a life based on approval and start living a life based on purpose. Think about it. If your goal in life is to be liked by everyone, you'll end up miserable. You'll constantly mold yourself to fit other people's expectations. You'll give away pieces of yourself hoping to be accepted, only to realize that there's nothing left of who you truly are. And in the end, when you're exhausted and empty, those same people who you tried to please won't care any more than they did when you started. The real question is, do you want to go through life seeking validation from people who won't even be there when the hard times hit? Or do you want to build something meaningful for yourself? When you focus on greatness, something shifts inside you. It's not about how others see you, it's about how you see yourself. It's about understanding that greatness doesn't come from being liked. It comes from being true to yourself, from pushing past what's easy, from challenging the norm, and from demanding more of yourself than anyone else ever could. Greatness isn't about being popular or fitting in. It's about standing out, being willing to do the work that others won't, and rising to the occasion when others shy away. But here's where it gets tricky. Most people will tell you to tone it down, to be more humble, to not rock the boat. They'll say you should care about what others think. And while it's important to be respectful and compassionate toward others, there's a big difference between caring for people and letting their opinions control you. If you're always worried about what others think, you'll never take the kind of risks that lead to real success. You'll never put in the kind of effort that leads to greatness. You'll always be holding back, second-guessing yourself, and wondering if you're being too much. The truth is, there's no such thing as too much when it comes to your potential. When you make the decision to be great, you're going to upset some people. You're going to make them uncomfortable because your ambition will challenge their complacency, and guess what? That's not your problem. It's not your responsibility to shrink yourself to make others feel better. The truth is, they've probably never had the courage to go after their own dreams, so they'll try to convince you to settle for less. They'll try to make you feel guilty for aiming higher, for working harder, for dreaming bigger. But here's the secret. When you start striving for greatness, you will inevitably create distance between yourself and those who aren't willing to do the same. And that's okay. It's not about burning bridges or leaving people behind. It's about realizing that not everyone is meant to go with you on your journey. And that's perfectly fine. Some people will stay in their comfort zone, never challenging themselves, never growing, and that's their choice. But your journey is yours to make, and greatness isn't a group project, it's a solo mission. Even if you have supporters along the way, there will be moments when you have to walk alone, and you've got to be okay with that. You've got to be okay with being misunderstood, with people not getting you, with people telling you you're too much, because that's the price of greatness. If you want to be great, you need to be willing to stand alone at times. You need to stop caring about fitting into everyone else's idea of what's acceptable. You've got to stop apologizing for wanting more. You've got to stop apologizing for chasing your dreams with everything you have. You've got to stop apologizing for setting high standards for yourself. The world will always have something to say about what you do, but the only thing that matters is your own commitment to your journey. Your greatness isn't for sale. It isn't up for discussion. It isn't something you need to justify. And here's the kicker. Greatness isn't just about winning the big moments. It's about showing up every single day. It's about putting in the work when no one's watching, when no one's cheering, when no one's even acknowledging your efforts. Because that's where the magic happens. Greatness is built in the small moments. It's built in the quiet hours, the late nights, the early mornings, the sacrifices no one sees. It's about doing the right thing even when no one's paying attention. It's about pushing through the doubt, the fatigue, the fear, even when you feel like no one's on your side. But don't get it twisted. Just because you're focused on greatness doesn't mean you're ignoring the people around you. You can still be kind, you can still be supportive, and you can still be there for others. But your first priority has to be yourself. You have to take care of your own growth, your own development, your own path. You've got to protect your vision from the noise and distractions of the world. And most importantly, you've got to protect your time. Time is the most valuable thing you have. And once you realize that, you'll stop wasting it on things and people who don't contribute to your greatness. You're not here to blend in. You're not here to make everyone happy. You're here to create something extraordinary. You're here to make an impact. You're here to leave a legacy that speaks for itself. You're here to be great, not liked. And when you start living with that mindset, something incredible happens. The right people start to notice you. The right opportunities start to open up. The right doors start to swing wide open. And you'll realize that all the sacrifices, all the late nights, all the hard work were worth it. Because greatness is never about being liked. It's about being remembered for what you've done, who you've become, and how you've changed the game. So stop chasing approval. Stop looking for validation from people who don't matter. Stop explaining why you're not where you want to be yet. Stop defending your decisions to people who don't understand your vision. They don't need to get it. You just need to keep moving, keep working, keep pushing. Because when you get to the top, no one's going to care who liked you along the way. They'll just remember that you were there. You were the one who decided not to fit in. You were the one who made the hard choices. You were the one who didn't stop. And that's the legacy you're here to build. That's the greatness you're here to claim. So don't shrink. Don't apologize. Don't make excuses. Be great. As we wrap up today's message, remember this: your success isn't dependent on the approval of others or on making excuses for your struggles. The real power comes when you take full responsibility for your journey and let your actions speak louder than any explanation or complaint ever could. You don't need to explain why you're going after your dreams, and you certainly don't need to complain about the challenges that come your way. Instead, embrace the grind, stay focused, and let the results you achieve be the loudest statement you can make. This is your life. You get to decide how it plays out. Don't waste another second explaining or complaining. Take control, make the decision to never complain and never explain. Your future self will thank you for it. Now, go out there, take action, and let your work do the talking. Keep moving forward, keep pushing, and never stop striving for greatness. The world doesn't need your explanation, it needs your success. And you have everything you need to make it happen. Thanks for being here today. Keep your head up, stay focused, and keep going. The best is yet to come.